topic. This is a wild topic I've never presented on before. And so please bear with me, but I'm going to talk about what I've learned learning a new language and teaching a new language, all within just a few months of each other. My daughter started a school in Denver. It's a classical school. And she said they were going to have like 2 classes of Latin, and they couldn't find a Latin teacher. And so she said, Dad, would you please teach Latin? But only problem was I didn't know Latin. And so, but I said yes, I wanted to be your hero. And so I started to learn. I don't claim to know Latin. If there's any Latin teachers out there, I would love to know. Please identify yourselves, put yourself in the chat, and correct me along the way here, okay? But I learned Latin in enough Latin to teach a little bit in about 4 months. And I'm volunteering to teach 2 Latin classes to help defray the cost of my daughter's school. And it's really, really interesting. I'm teaching a new language, and I'm learning a lot of new things and relearning some things. And I actually have more questions than anything else. So I'm actually going to just frame this in terms of the questions I've asked myself to prime you to say, what do I need to question about my own learning and maintenance of language, and also of how we teach languages and how students learn. So it's really a very exciting deal. Are there any Latin teachers there today? Nobody's identified themselves or raised their hand here that I can see. Latin teachers? I'm always looking for help from Latin teachers. All right, maybe if not, all right, I have a little, let me see here. Okay, so I'm going to share Michael, did you make me so I can share my screen? I guess we're going to find out.
Yes, I did. You should be the host.
All right, good. All right. So I'm calling learning and relearning what I've realized teaching and becoming a student of Latin. And I don't claim to know Latin, but I'm staying a little bit ahead of the kids so far. I've learned so much. I have way more questions than answers. But just to frame this a little bit, I am determined to learn Latin the way that I tell people to teach. And so I'm practicing what I preach. I've read about 75 little novels so far in Latin. And they're amazing, just amazing what these Latin teachers are doing. It's put as I'm a Spanish teacher by trade, and a little French, a little Russian, a little bit smatterings of some other languages. But I tell you, these Latin teachers are putting us teachers of other modern languages to shame. There's some authors that are writing novels with 10, 20, 30 unique words in the whole novel, like 2,000, 3,000 word novel. The rest of the words are just places and people. And it's amazing what they're doing. So I'm putting that out as a kind of a challenge to us modern language teachers that we need to think about this. I mean, my students were able to start reading, my Latin students were able to start reading literally the first week of class. And we only meet 2 days a week because of teaching them the high frequency verbs in the third person present tense. And it's just, it's dumbfounding how good they are. Of course, so their Latin teachers are struggling for their lives and to build their classes up. And many of them are doing just a fantastic job of it. But anyway, I've just discovered lots and lots of questions, I guess, more than anything with Latin. It's like, what are the goals of the program? And these are kind of the 7 main areas of my questions that I'm asking. And these will apply to you too. So that's why I want to share this, because it's really prompted me, like, if I was going to teach Spanish again, how would I do this? So what are the goals of the programs, the language content, the cultural content especially? How are you going to teach it? What materials? How are you going to, who are you going to follow? That's maybe one of the more important ones. And how can I afford this? So there's lots of subsections under each of these, but I just wanted to share these. Also, I would like to just let you know, this is for y'all, right? This is not just me tooting my horn or giving you some fun facts. When you have a question or a comment, throw it out there, okay? This is the first time I've ever presented this. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know if it, or how deep we'll get, but I do want to discuss with you what's on your mind and what prompts you to, or what are some things this makes you think of as I go through this, okay? So my first question I asked myself, like, what are the goals of the program? You know, it's like, what are the language goals? What are the attitude and awareness goals? What are the life enhancement is what I'm calling it, goals? Because I'm finding I actually want that. I've never said that before, but I want to enhance my students' lives. I want to make their lives better for having been with me in the class. And what are other goals that are just along the way? But the language, usually we only think of the language goals, don't we? So what are the goals of the program? So these are some of the things that I think may be interesting along the way. And what do we want them to know and be able to do is the classic question. But what do the students want? What do their parents want when they take this class? What are the goals of similar programs? I want to model the really successful programs like Bob Patrick, Lance Piantagini, and there's so many really good language teachers Latin teachers out there. I want to model similar programs. How much do we expect them to learn? How far will they go in the language? And what can I give them if they do not go on? It's like, I don't want to leave the kids that are slower or not academically inclined. I want their lives to be enriched if they only take one semester or 1 year from me. And how can I do that? And so that's one thing that I'm asking myself every single day. And how can students learn as much as possible given the situation? This is a really unique situation. It's a brand new school. We don't have a curriculum. We don't have, experience to go on. And my Latin classes only meet twice a week. I'm teaching middle school and high school. And right now I'm calling it Latin 1A and Latin 1. And I'm just doing what I can. How do these questions strike you? What other questions would you have, or what other goals do you have for your program? That's what I'd like to know. Put that in the chat, okay? And because I'm interested in what everyone else has to say here. I mean, you all know about language teaching. You have expertise, and so we might as well share the group hive mind here, okay? So what other goals do you have for your program? I'll do some wait time here. I'd like for a couple people to unmute and several people to write in the chat, because this is undoubtedly some things I have not thought of. Have students fall in love? Yes. Oh, Terry. Yeah. How could I forget that? Yeah. Have them fall in love. How can diversity affect what I do every day? Or maybe how does diversity affect what I do every day? Yeah. Michael, is to appreciate learning the language. Yeah. Yeah, we want them to appreciate it, to value it. Exactly. To become world citizens, yeah, to realize it's not just our little, tiny little community. Linda, you want to offer Latin at your school too? I tell you what, everybody told me that Latin would be easy for me since I speak Spanish, but I'm not so sure. There's an advantage with some of the vocabulary and a little bit of the conjugation, but I'm telling you what, these declensions are kicking my butt. And I'm learning it by reading in Latin and listening to videos in Latin. And that's what I'm doing with my students, because some people, in fact, it was John Bryce at the Voces conference this summer, who said, you know, the kids will pick up the grammar if you just keep using it correctly with them. And so, Linda, maybe you can pick up Latin, or start, and we'll compare notes.
I think our students don't read enough, so if you're learning by reading, that's great.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to show you how my students are learning by reading, because since I'm only teaching 2 days a week, they've got to learn on their own outside of class. It's like there's no other way to do it. So I'll show you that. So what are the language goals, and what specific vocabulary should I teach? What specific part of grammar should I teach? I'll go back to them in a second. What if someone were to ask you that? What specific vocabulary are you teaching, and what grammar are you teaching, or should you teach? Throwing this out too, because since I don't know anything about, I know about teaching languages, Spanish, but you know, what specifically do I teach? I can tell you what I came up with. Spanish native students are afraid to read. You can get them, I think you can get them there. I've had the native students too, and you can get them there. If you do something that schools never, ever do, and it's give them things to read that are comprehensible and interesting. That is the key. If I were to get tattoos, I would get comprehensible on this arm and interesting on this one, so I can always see them every day. That's how we need to teach, and that's how we need to teach language, the materials we need to give our students to read. It needs to be comprehensible and interesting. So if your native students are afraid to read, you're going to have to find leveled readers for them in Spanish or English. I'm not sure which ones you're talking about. Martha, I assume you're talking about reading in Spanish. But you're going to have to find things that are interesting to them, interesting content, but also understandable for their level. And they're going to be all over. Your natives, your heritage speakers are going to be every level, all over the place. And so it's a big task, you bet. When I came up with what specific vocabulary should I teach, I said I'm going to teach the high frequency verbs. I'm going to give them things they can say in class, and some of the things that we'll be reading about. It's different for an ancient language than it is for a modern language. You know, super 7 verbs, exactly, super 7 verbs. Very good, Martha. Yeah, Maria says practical daily vocabulary. Yes, in a modern language, it's different. You're not going to be ordering a hamburger for lunch in Latin. You know, you're not going to be buying or selling or comparing schedules or sharing phone numbers, all kinds of things. You're not going to be doing in an ancient language that you are in a modern language. So it's going to require a different set of vocabulary. I did the vocabulary I did was for sure the super 7, but on beyond that, I did the most important word verbs in the Latin language, and which are very similar to other languages, but I wanted to make sure I included the most important verbs that are used most in classical Latin. And grammar, I just am leaving off the grammar. I'm just teaching the core of words, and students can figure out they can figure out what it says, they can figure out what the conjugations are, and they can figure out what the declensions are in Latin so far. So it's working well, and I'll show you. How important it is to know the number system. Latin, it's not that important, I don't think. But we do it and we have fun with it. Something like this. Here's 50 and here's 40. But L and XL, there's different things in Latin and English. So I do fun stuff with them. We play games, all kinds of things with numbers. But the numbers are not nearly as important in an ancient language. And what are the attitude and awareness goals? I want them to know about the role of the heritage and the heritage of the target language. You know, most students and parents are going to come to this class saying it's a dead language for Latin, but for your language, they're going to say, why would I need to know French? I live in El Paso, you know, and it's like, they're going to say things like that. We need to have good answers for them. This is my good answer. The best answer I could think of for Latin. But you're going to think of what are the attitudes that students need for your language. Like how much of the geography of the target language and cultures, especially for like French and Spanish, they're worldwide cultures. How much do they need to know? I'm finding out students know very, very little of this Roman world, and so we're working on that. And I do fun stuff with them too, so I like this. I got boys that are real jokers in the class, so I gave them this. They thought it was hilarious. How much of the target history and culture? You know, the Ides of March is coming right up. And so we're going to be talking about Julius Caesar in Latin and reading little practical little things. So that's definitely coming. And what are the life enhancement goals I'm saying? You know, is it wisdom, virtue, appreciation of the language? Like we said before, understanding more about human nature by studying the language and understanding more of how the world actually works, just how people are, how things function by studying the language. I think it's almost like, it's like a life skills in Latin, or it can be a life skills in Spanish, life skills in French. By the way, I'm saying Latin because I'm teaching this. I'm saying Spanish because I teach it. And there's a few French teachers I recognize on here, but could you put in the chat, please, what language you teach? Okay, what language or languages you teach, just so I know, maybe so I can I'll leave anybody out and give examples. We have French, Spanish. I just want to know if there's other languages like Italian, Japanese, Mandarin. I don't want to leave them out and in my examples, Spanish and French. So we get Spanish and French so far. Campbell Ainsworth from Salt Lake City. Campbell, is that you? Different Campbell? I didn't see if you raised your hand or said something. I didn't see. I can only see about 5 people right now. Your name is flashing across my screen partially, Campbell, so I don't know. Right in the chat. I can't tell. Okay, ELA in the summer, Spanish and French. All right. Yeah. It's just helpful for me to know. So the life, I want my students to be wiser, more virtuous, appreciate the language more for having taken my class. And I thought this was hilarious. I saw this news headline today that she's divorcing an extremely unattractive loser, which is similar to a story we just read in my high school Latin class about Venus and Mars. And the students would have totally predicted this, because if you don't know the story, Vulcan was the husband of Venus. Vulcan was old, lame, and extremely ugly. And he was an extremely unattractive loser. The kids said, "Oh man, okay, Campbell, it is you. Okay, thank you, Campbell." The kids said, "Oh man, that marriage is not going to work." She's young, pretty, and a goddess of love, and Vulcan was old, lame, and as ugly as could be. So I thought that was really, really interesting. That the kids would have predicted something like this. If they saw this headline, they say, "Yes, that's exactly like Venus and Mars." That's a little bit of this life enhancement, understanding human nature. Is it right? No. But does this happen? Yeah, that's what the kids would have predicted anyway. I was proud of them. But the specific language content, this is the second main one. The beginning language courses focus on the low-hanging fruit. What would you say that low-hanging fruit is? I'm not going to put you in breakout groups because I think those are no longer helpful, but I need for you to respond here. This is supposed to be an interactive thing, not just me. What are the low-hanging fruit that we focus on in beginning language courses? I have my suspicions and my observations. Yeah, what kind of vocabulary? Greetings, okay. Right, what else? Emotions, sports, foods, okay. What is readily available? Okay, I like that. Numbers, colors, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I would say. We tend to focus in low-level classes on the colors and numbers, body parts, classroom object, greetings. We didn't say that, but yeah, family. Yeah. Yes, go ahead. No? Okay. I heard something, but I guess not. All right. But what's most helpful if you want students to understand messages and talk about interesting and important topics? It may not be these, and particularly in my particular instance here, I'm not real, I used to do colors right at the beginning, body parts at the beginning, numbers, right? First 2 or 3 weeks, I'd be doing all these things. But I'm not sure if I can't sustain interesting stories or interesting talking with those kind of things. And I call them the low-hanging fruit because they're more concrete type items. They're easy to remember. And that's why we go for those. That's because they're easier to teach and we feel like we can get some success right out of the gate with those. But I think that the verbs are probably the most important, What we want to do is get students where they can read for meaning. And I'm not talking about authentic text, but we want them to read for meaning, even if these vocabulary controlled readers, and not focus on the code. To do that, I think we need to do the verbs, right? We need to do that's the most useful and important things for students is learning those verbs. So I get them into students quickly and efficiently. I found myself in this situation where I couldn't do my normal way of teaching, like inventing stories with a class. I can't think on my feet fast enough in Latin to do that. In Spanish, it's a piece of cake because I've been teaching Spanish for 30 years. And I also can't do what I also love more than anything is doing the special person student interviews. I have all kinds of charts on the wall in Latin, but I can't ask follow-up questions very easily in Latin because I just don't have at my disposal all this vocabulary. And it's strange because I don't know enough language. I can't make simple stories and I can't make simple comments because there's just a few little things. Like one of the very first days we were talking, I was trying to do an interview with a kid, and I said, "Do you have any animals?" She said, "Yes, I have a dog." She goes, "How do you say dog? How do you say dog in Latin?" I'm like, "Man, I don't know. Canem, I think, and it's like a simple word like that I had not come across in my reading yet, and so I couldn't even say something like that. Whereas, so that's really interesting. It also brings to my mind, man, maybe some people, I'm always going on, oh, just tell stories. Oh, just talk to your kids. Oh, just do an interview with them. Well, maybe some people are not as confident or fluent in the language as need be. Maybe they're just not fast on their feet. And so I maybe have been not too harsh, but not too aware of what people are thinking and their language level. And to tell the truth, I'm not sure I could have done like a special person student interviews with when I first started teaching. I don't know if I could have or not. I'm not sure if I was fluent enough or knew how to integrate simple language with kids. And so that was, this is very interesting to me. What do your reactions to that? Do you think I'm not asking you to say, oh, I'm not fluent enough. I'm asking you to say, when you started to teach, would you have had trouble? I knew my fluency got better as I taught more with comprehensible input. I really became much, much better at speaking Spanish. I'm hoping to get there with Latin. But this is how I did it. This is how I've been doing it. I got the key verbs into students quickly and efficiently with classical TPR. If you don't do this, get this book and start doing it. I bet I got 40 verbs into my students in the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they could start reading like crazy. Layla says, I'm still wondering if there's a way to incorporate more vocabulary outside reading. Yes, we're going to get to that. Just right coming up. Hang with us here. My kids are limited in what we read. It doesn't give me much to ask when circling. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you, Aaron, for the link. Yeah, get that book. I bet you can get it on Amazon used for $2, or someplace. So I get it. This is what worked for me like crazy, and I'm going to show you the fruit of it. If this is another way to get them reading from the low levels, is there's Frequency Dictionary of Spanish. I like Wiktionary the best because that's based on spoken media. But go to both of those, and actually, Wiktionary now has these frequency dictionaries for all languages online. Yeah, TPR is more than commands. Yep, that's a great one too. So these are the books that I've been using to make sure I'm doing the right words. This Barron's has the top 50 verbs in it, and this has it's ranked Latin vocabulary because I just got to make sure I'm using the right words, especially in a language I don't know well. I'll give you an example. Like in Spanish, the word deber, must, have to, ought to, should. is probably, I think it's about number 80 in most language frequency levels. It's a top 100 word. I never used it because I started using to need, like necesitar, with my early language learners because it was more of a cognate. I got in the habit of doing that, and I would get kids in like level 3, and they didn't know how to use the word deber. And so that's an example from long ago, and I realized how important it is to make sure you're following these frequency lists, and even if you're a native speaker, because your curriculum is going to constrict you what you can say. So don't think you get off the hook just like, well, I'm a native speaker, I'll probably be using a natural language. You will, but the materials you're having to follow probably won't. Make sure you're using the most important words. And so this is what I've done. I found several readings. I'm like, oh man, this reading has top 100 words in it, all of them except for like 4 words in the whole reading is top. And so I just, I really, really like those. We used our list for developing Voces. Yes, good. So reading from low level, sorry, this is from my book on reading, high impact reading strategies. So a lot of this stuff I learned about reading comes from I'm working on the 2nd edition, so that's why all these notes are in here. But high impact reading strategies, that has really helped a lot of people. But we teach them to use the essential verbs. They can read on their own way, way faster than you would think. And because they expect words to appear in sentences, not isolated. So I teach them with commands, not with TPR and novel commands, and start putting them in simple, short little snippets of stories. That's just the first step. And then they can start reading and start recognizing. But we got to put them in context. And I coach students to choose books this way. This is on my website, how to choose a book. And when they do, they start choosing the right book. They start choosing the appropriate book for them. When I developed this system, I put this on all 4 walls of the classroom, but especially right by the classroom library. And it just says interesting and comprehensible in about 6 or 8 ways, I think, both positively and negatively. And a lot of it is in kid speak, something you like and you can understand. Keeps your attention and you can read it without struggling. Yes, okay, good. And so just get this across to them. We do not, as teachers, as a group, we don't ever give students things that are comprehensible and interesting to read. Most of the stuff we give them is not interesting and they can't understand it. And that's a problem. The way you're going to develop readers, real readers, not fake readers, is by giving them interesting, comprehensible stuff. So can they participate in free voluntary reading? Well, here is one of my students from this year in the first semester. Okay, she's a 5th grader. She's in our middle school class in our school. She's read all these books in Latin in the first 4 months. And I asked her, she reads them on her own at home, and all the kids are checking out books. She reads them at home. And she's just the most the enthusiastic reader. But she's read 11 books, and 3 or 4 of them are by a local author. Like these 2 are from a local author, and this one is 2, I think. Wait, and this one. So there's an author, she's nationally known, Rachel Beth Cunning, just lives like 20 miles away from us up the hill in Estes Park. And she's going to come to our class. She's like so excited. In fact, the kid the other day had a new backpack, and it had RBC on his backpack, some logo. And he goes, "Oh, this is Rachel Beth Cunning's initials, you know?" And so I took a picture and sent it to her. She's thrilled. She's going to Zoom in or come meet our students in class in person because they've read several of her books. That entices kids too. But look at this kid. She has read 37,000 words outside of class on her own, and let alone in interviews in class, stories in class, and the book we shared and read together in class. So how many words has she read in Latin that she's understood? Around 50,000 words, I'd say. That's good. She's starting to get it. And she's starting to get the macrons, which is sort of like accent marks in Spanish or French. And she's really just doing amazingly well. These are the books that she's read. I took pictures of them. This was the first 5 weeks of school. I call it our book share. We have, I bought books for the kids for our book share program, our classroom library. And over 50 books have been checked out, 51 books in 2 small classes. And they're starting to read on their own outside of class. So yeah, this works. If we can get them doing this, and this works beautifully for my situation, right? Because we meet 2 days a week, right? And so that's not much time. They got to read on their own, but them reading on their own may be 80% of the results. This Pareto principle, this happens in all of life, where 20% of your effort, this is not just in school, but 20% of your effort will yield 80% of your results. If you don't believe that, just think of the last committee you worked on, okay? That a couple people do all the work and get most of the results. But this works in many, many areas, and I'm convinced that reading is part of that. You do that by teaching them the verbs. Once they get the verbs, the other words are easy for them to get. Nouns are easy for them to pick up. Place names and people's names are just total piece of cake for them to pick up. The verbs are a little bit harder. They're a little bit more abstract. So get those. And then right now we're concentrating on the grammatical words, the function words, prepositions, pronouns, different things like that, that form the grammar of sentences and hold things together. I'm just making sure kids understand those too. So that's what we're doing. This, I always like to throw this in when I'm talking about free voluntary reading. This is a former student. He's actually 32 right now. He still looks like he's a middle school kid, but this was the book I loaned him from Spanish. He was in Spanish too. And he was a good reader even then. But he got a PhD in Latin American literature. Your results will vary, but this can happen. This is my 7th question, and I put this here because I didn't know if we'd get through everything, and we may not. But you're going to say, yeah, but I can't afford to have a classroom library. I don't have any materials. I don't know what to do. My students can't read because I don't have anything for a library. For goodness sake, what's going to happen? So here's what you do. Ask. Just ask. All right? It's often the case you have not just because you ask not. You're going to ask. Here's some ways you can ask. All these, take a screenshot of this. I'm going to put another slide very similar to this up in a second. But put this up. I know personally teachers that have done every single one, and not that have done all of these, right? Not any one person has done all of them, but I know people that have done all of these. These ones, most people do a mix. The ones in red are the ones that I've done. And for this most recent one, I bought them myself, and they also did they wrote a grant. My daughter wrote a grant, got $100,000 for materials for her school. So do those. These are the red ones are the ones I've done for sure. This is the one that's most amazing. I went to this little tiny world language teacher conference in Wyoming this fall. Met this teacher, Dustin Lee. Teaches Spanish. He also teaches Frisbee golf and I think girls basketball coach or something maybe. But he did a community-wide fundraiser for his town of Pine Bluffs, Wyoming. He raised $88,000. That's not only for Spanish, right? It's for other things to help build a Frisbee golf course and some things like that. But he's got a dang good library right now. Now, if you be interesting, I need an outside testimonial here. You undoubtedly live in a town that's much, much smaller than Pine Bluffs, Wyoming. Can somebody Google Pine Bluffs, Wyoming right now and tell us how many hundreds of thousands of people live there? Put it in the chat or unmute. Yes, 1,100. Yeah, 1,129. Thank you. Yeah. There's a little tiny town. That means like everybody in town gave $80. Is that is that right? Yeah. There's $80 for every single person in town was given, you know, including retirees and babies. So amazing, just amazing. You can't do all of these, and I'm not saying you should, of course not, but you can do some of them. You can do a few of them. So take a shot of this and start thinking about that. Our last 700 winners, Martha, Linda, and Ashley, and a Voces reader. Ah, nice. It'll help them build their classroom libraries. Nice. Thank you, Michael. Yeah. Okay, that's another one. Enter a contest. I guess I'll add that to the list, right? Or something. Is that what I should put, Michael?
Sounds great.
Okay. Enter a contest. That's like asking. All right. Yeah, I used to not add this because somebody said, "Oh, teachers know how to do that." I'm not sure. You know, it's like if you're new at this, or you just don't have any funds, or your school district or your principal or your school is not cooperating with you, then maybe you can. You get paralyzed. You know, just like what am I supposed to do? The good thing about it is buying yourself. I bought a lot of books my own self now this is over like 20 years in my classroom, right? I bought a lot of my own books. When I left my classroom, when I left teaching Spanish full-time to go train teachers, I gave 500 books to a teacher that I was mentoring in Denver. And I gave 200 more to another teacher here in my town. And I still have lots of them because of like, oh, my grandkids may want to learn Spanish sometime. So that's an advantage. You know, there's a definite advantage to buying them yourself because you have control of them and you can take them with you. But think about all these. All right. While we're at this, if you're going to get books, this is about one of the only times I would give a specific kind product. To preserve your paper books and keep them looking like new for 15 years, get this Scotch heavy duty tape and put it on there. Put it on like this. On the front cover, put it on here, and then wrap it around behind the front cover to double reinforce those edges. Oops. And then just put it on the spine too. And just doing that, just the front cover and the spine, you don't have to do the back cover or anything else. This will keep your books nice. If you have paper books, it will keep them nice for 10, 15. I swear I've had some for 20 years. They look just beautiful because of that. So that's an little extra thing. Doesn't really have to do with this, but I've gotten so many books. We have over 100 books in our Latin classroom library right now. And so fortunately, my wife has helped me tape all these books and we get them in all the time. But I'm planning on keeping them for a long time. So how do I make the stories culturally relevant, comprehensible, compelling? I am teaching, and this is like some of my last few prepared slides here. But the way I'm doing this, the way I keep the stories relevant and compelling, is I teach with mythology. I'm just going to stop the sharing right there. I teach with mythology. I've been teaching Roman mythology in all my classes. I'm doing more and more of it. It's so valuable because they're good stories. They're stories that have stood the passage of time. The extra details are cut out of them. They're usually relatively short, and you can find them other places. So find cultural stories that you can teach and you can simplify. I've done this for years in Spanish. I did La Llorona is my favorite one to do. I did a book on that, embedded reading on La Llorona. And so I would like to recommend that specific deal. But there's lots of ways you can do this with cultural stories. Let me just see here. Hold on 1 second. I'll see if I can find one that's no. So anyway, if you're going to do what I've really been having luck with is mythology. You can find comparable cultural stories in your discipline for your language. As I'm looking for these slides here, what are some cultural stories for your language? I already said La Llorona. We have there's lots and lots of other ones that are really good. Here I'm going through another slide deck here. I'll find it in a second. What in your culture and language that you teach, what are the ones that work for you? All right, I'm going to go back to this. I want to hear from you. Put it in the chat or unmute. What is this too much for you guys? You've been watching watching sessions all day. It's on a Saturday to boot. You're all tuckered out. Is that it? Let me show you. Oops. I'll prompt you a little bit, show you what I'm talking about here. Here's what I'm talking about, about cultural stories. And specifically, yeah, thank you. Chupacabra, Popo and Ixta, thank you. Yeah. French speakers, we have several French speakers. Throw some out there to help each other out. You're not helping me, you're helping each other to get ideas, all right? You want to use cultural stories and teach cultural stories with your students because they're just compelling. They're just naturally compelling, or they wouldn't have lasted for so long. They have a few unnecessary details. Most native speakers know them. Then they help them with the mindset and worldview of speakers of the language. This is probably the main reason we want to tell cultural stories. Like I'm doing with the Latin. It's like I'm realizing, oh, wow, I just happened to hit on this. But in this book, Story Proof by Kendall Haven, he says that human thought processes are largely metaphorical. And we use about 6 metaphors per minute of speech. In order to understand language, you need to know the cultural metaphors. You need to know and they come from cultural stories. Metaphors are shorthand for learning how to communicating with people. Layla says fox and crow. Okay, is that like an Aesop's fable or something? I'm not familiar with that. What language or culture does that come from, Layla? My chat is stuck here, it looks like. Anyway, so think about that. Science fiction, this science fiction episode, and this is from my book on high impact reading strategies. I just did a blog last night, knowing I'll be presenting this today, that shows this episode from the old Star Trek, The Next Generation, shows how important it is that how understanding cultural metaphors works. And I have a teaching on this. Go to my website, it's brycehedstrom.com, and go to my blog, and it's the latest blog entry, so it's right on the top. And I have a, oh yeah, thank you, Michael. And it's right there. And this, I love this episode. I'm a big science fiction geek, and I'm also old. Does anybody know this one? This Darmok? It's stupendous, and lots of there are social studies teachers and professors, and as well as world language instructors, that say this is or should enter into our cultural literacy, because it shows how important it is to understand culture, that you can't understand a language without the culture. And yeah, there it is, the power of cultural stories. Thank you. Yeah, so open that and bookmark it. It's really good. One interesting claim to fame, my original activity for Darmok wound up, of all places, on a German Wikipedia page. And it's not in German, and I don't speak German, but for some reason it's on there. And so there's a link to that too, which is kind of interesting. But I love this, showing how important metaphors are. And here's what we can talk about with Legend of La Llorona. So there's a few other good ones on there. We'll run out of time, but I want to show, I had a slide here. Yeah, here's some. If I was doing a 3 or 4 hour seminar, we would do some of these, okay? There's La Llorona, Medio Pollito, there's Popo Anitsta. There's a few other, some other ones that you mentioned. What are some ones we mentioned on here? El Duende, Fox and Crow. La Fontaine told in French. Okay, thank you. Aesop, yep. Okay. Yep. Find those and tell those, because that's going to help students understand tidbits of the language. And my students are really, really getting how language works, and how the pulse of the culture from doing all these things. So a lot of these are just a quick overview of what I was talking about here with what I've learned teaching Latin, and it's what good teaching is. What I'm determined not to do is to teach them explicit grammar. And my students are getting it already. They're writing macrons. We had doing whiteboards. I'll tell them to have them a sentence, or I'll say we'll do a close activity, or have them write answers on their whiteboards, and they hold it up. They're getting it. They're getting the spelling. They're getting the correct way to conjugate verbs and to use the declensions in Latin. It's just dumbfounding to me how well they're doing with this. And I think a lot of it is because I'm teaching with cultural stories that hold their attention. So that's been fast. I'm sure I didn't answer all your questions, but that's our time, right, Erin?
Yeah, that basically concludes, although we have a little bit, we always can go a little bit longer too.
Okay, all right. I don't
if there are any questions.
Take anybody extra time. Yeah, so I would say, my job as a language teacher is to speak clear Spanish to you, or clear Latin to you. Your job is to let me know if I'm doing my job or not. So I couldn't have been that clear. So where do I need to fill in some things? I'm willing to stay for however long you need to. I know you had a long week and a long day. How many presentations have you had? Like 5 already so far?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But people have come and gone and all that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I came in a little late because I had to go take my son somewhere. But when I came in, I heard you talk about how like some teachers might not be as confident as others in speaking in the target language. And I just feel like that observation that maybe came a little bit from your experience. I just think it's a really important one to make. I think there are teachers out there that feel that way, and then overcome it by using CI more and speaking it more in the class. But just that initial hump is a little bit difficult. So
it is. It was. And when I started, I said I don't think I could have done it. I don't know if I could have taught with CI in my first years of being a teacher. And then when I did start with CI, I put my questions on cards on a ring and would just ask them in class. I'm having to do that again in Latin. It's like I'll have a story and then we'll read it and we'll talk about it. And then I would just ask these questions about it because I can't think fast enough on my feet yet. And that's really a thing, I think, that's just getting confident in front of the crowd, and just interacting spontaneously with them.
Well, and
it takes a while.
I heard in one of the previous sessions, like earlier this week, someone saying how the pandemic really, and not being able to travel to, in her case, like Spanish speaking countries and immerse herself in the language, that it, kind of brought her back a little bit in her confidence in speaking the language. So that might be another factor that people are contending with. So,
yeah. Erica, thank you. Erica, I love the way you think. And I miss seeing you because I miss asking you what you're reading. Okay. But if you're interested, what I'm reading right now is like 3 different versions of the myth of Cupid and Psyche in Latin. I'm just trying to figure out which one I want to teach with my students. So thank you, Erica. And I will, I'm going to look that up.
You are welcome, Bryce. I miss talking to you too. I'll send you some link information.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'm reading like 3 different things, so.
Yeah, I bet. Okay. Good.
Are there any other questions? Well, Bryce, thank you so much for presenting today. You always have such like a understanding and approachable, perspective on what teachers are doing every day. And of course, you always have so many awesome resources. And we did put your link in the chat, but I very much encourage people to check out your website. There's tons of free resources and great ideas and just so much support, so it's just really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't get much support when I was a student teacher. And I said, if I'm ever able to help people, I'm going to do it. And so that's my story from years ago, my student teaching. So there's tons of free stuff on my website. Of course, I will come to your school district or your area or your school and train your teachers in person if you'd like to. But anyway, thank you for this opportunity, Aaron and Michael. And I appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the people. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank everyone for being here on your Saturday afternoon. I hope you have a very restful rest of the weekend. I will say that if you did win a prize this week, I'll be in touch with you next week with, asking you what you want and explaining to you what you won, if you have any questions about that. And then also sign up for a certificate if you haven't yet, and I'll put it in the chat right now. But you only have to sign up for it once and we'll send them to you. It's like a certificate of participation. We'll send it to you by the end of this coming week. So we've really enjoyed having everyone here. This is always kind of like a ride, it's quite a long 4 days in a sense, but it goes by really fast. I'm always super impressed with everyone's commitment. I love seeing all the familiar names and faces. And a big thank you to all the presenters, and thank you, Erica. I wasn't here for yours, but I, appreciate you giving your presentation, and you, Bryce, and everyone else. I mean, we just had some great minds and wonderful ideas. So, oh, and I'll be emailing everyone who registered all the recordings and all the links and all that great stuff. So I'll do one big email next week with all that stuff in there. So thank you guys so much and have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm. Shovel out, like, yeah, I have lots of snow, but I shoveled it. Take care, everyone.